All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Been a while. I know we skipped last month's meeting. Busy finishing touches to V3, and happy to say that it is officially live as of Sunday evening. I know a lot of people are busy migrating. So today we will cover the migration guide and some general high-level recommendations. I want to talk about Xerox API and some of our plans around like DEX aggregation and the ERC20 bridge contracts. Also wanted to talk about a few new ways that you can actually use the ERC20 bridge contracts and some of the upcoming ones that we're planning on releasing. Wanted to open up a discussion around protocol fees for non-fungible tokens. We've gotten a good amount of questions around that in the past. And then I wanted to give a sneak peek into a staking portal that we'll be releasing in a few weeks. And then finally, talk about the progress we've been making on Mesh, and then end with a Q&A.
Yeah, so as Amir mentioned, V3 is now live as of the 2nd December. Starting to get a few trades coming in on the V3 version. So if you go to the next slide, so V2 is still going to exist, and it'll exist probably for a little bit of time. But basically, there will be no more tooling support for V2, and within Q1, we'll actually start to look at if there's any activity on V2 and then potentially shut it down if there is none. So we're incentivizing people to move to V3 as soon as possible, but V2 will remain working for the foreseeable future. Next slide. Oh, yeah. So for V3, there is an upgrade guide on our website. You can go to it at Docs Guides V3 Upgrade. For anyone who hasn't gone through what's new in V3, the bare minimum information to know is there's a new order format. There's protocol fees, which is 150,000 times the gas price times the orders filled. With V3, we're moving more people to the Mesh network to distribute and share liquidity. There's new staking features, so market makers can start to create pools and get staked and receive the protocol fee as a rebate. You can start to charge fees in any arbitrary asset rather than just only ZRX. We are working and have deployed some ERC20 bridges, which we'll talk about shortly. If you're ready to get started with V3 right now, the packages have been published and they've all been bumped to like a major version. So to get on V3, just basically update to the latest major version. And if you want to find out some more details and dive in a bit deeper, then you can go to the exchange specs or the staking specs, and some of the other specs that aren't there yet are in the GitHub.
And there's also an appendix at the end of these slides, I believe, with some more detail. But it's also information we've gone over in previous dev meetings for the most part.
Right. So, V3 enables new functionality, and it's a great opportunity to vastly improve the experience of building on ZeroX for both DApp developers and market makers. So we're working on the ZeroX API. We will be sharing more details in the following dev ecosystem meetings, but for now, we just wanted to give you kind of like an overview of what the initial features will be for this API. So for now, it will include the SRA V3 compatible, which is already available through those links. It's also going to include the standard staking API and a quote endpoint that will include all the ERC20 bridges and asset swapper, which will we go into detail shortly. But basically, this will allow developer teams to create exchange-like experiences, open margin positions, and mint new index tokens. As I said, the SRA V3 compatible is already available, but we are doing a soft launch of the rest of the functionality, specifically the quote endpoint, by the second half of December.
And maybe just to clarify, the SRA endpoint just mirrors the liquidity that's available on the mesh network. So you can get that also just by spinning up a mesh node, but if you're lazy, you can hit this endpoint instead.
Yeah, now might also be a good time to talk about our plans for DEX aggregation a little bit. I mean, there's a link to a spec here, but the general idea is to more so include it in an API initially, rather than trying to display these in an order book or have these orders route through mesh or anything. So ideally, you query a quote endpoint, and that will just like return all the 0x orders as well as the orders for these external DEX protocols. And then, yeah, finally, also want to mention that this API is open source and it is intended for anyone to be able to run it. It really just adds some nice usability features on top of mesh.
Yeah, and if you're interested about looking at the spec, please click on the work in progress spec link that's attached to the presentation. And please, if you have any feedback, reach out to us.
So, yeah, we've talked a lot about using this ERC20 bridge pattern for aggregating other on-chain liquidity in the past. But there's actually a lot more you can do with ERC20 bridge contracts. And I think it has really nice synergy with borrowing and lending protocols specifically. We've seen this huge growth in like the value locked in DeFi. This is actually a pretty old chart. I think it's probably like plus 100 million if you look at it today. But these are users who they're using DeFi. They've gotten past any UX hurdles of MetaMask or whatever wallet they're using. And they're really like our primary target for the types of people who we would want to also provide liquidity. The issue is that right now, if your assets are locked in DeFi, you're not really using those assets for anything else, right? They're like simply earning interest or maybe deposited in some liquidity pool like Uniswap. But in an ideal world, you would be able to use your assets for multiple purposes simultaneously. And this is what we hope to enable with some upcoming ERC20 bridge contracts. Yeah, I just talked about a lot of this, but more specifically, what you can do using an ERC20 bridge contract in conjunction with a lending protocol is you can earn interest on your assets while providing liquidity. You can utilize margin to provide more liquidity in the form of margin limit orders. You can utilize margin to initiate short positions, which means you don't need to hold inventory of volatile assets anymore. You can just be, trading out of USDC or DAI at any given time. You could potentially provide liquidity on multiple decentralized exchange protocols. It's not the use case we're focusing on right now, though. And there are certainly more advanced hedging strategies that can be implemented with ERC20 bridge contracts as well. But I would say this first point is the one that we are focused on right now. It is by far the easiest to implement. And I think it's also the easiest to understand for users. It doesn't really come with any overhead. If you are utilizing or if you're lending your assets out somewhere, you would essentially just need to set an allowance to one of the 0x contracts, and you would be able to trade out of the balance that you are already lending. So the two bridge contracts that we want to support out of the box, outside of the DEX aggregation ones, are a DYDX bridge and a Chai bridge. So I'll talk about these two specifically. So the DYDX bridge basically supports all of the lending and borrowing capabilities that we want. And this is why we decided to start with DYDX initially. It's by far the easiest to work with and implement for both borrowing and lending. We've taken a look at Compound, for example, and it's fairly easy to allow people to lend their assets out while providing liquidity, but it's harder to actually borrow those assets to utilize margin. Using DYDX allows us to kind of test this hypothesis pretty quickly, and if that turns out to be effective, then we could create the more complex bridges for these other protocols and enable margin trading that way as well. And then I don't know if people on this call are super familiar with multi-collateral DAI or the CHAI contract. So I'll give a very high-level overview of that. So in multi-collateral DAI, there's something called the DAI savings rate, which is essentially interest on your DAI, and it's kind of a parameter that can be tweaked to change the demand for DAI at any given time. Initially, it's just set to 2% per year, fairly small, but you need to actually lock your DAI in a contract to be earning this interest. It's not really natively supported in a token form. So someone went ahead and created this CHAI contract. This is actually created by the dApp Hub team, who's worked a lot with Maker. And this just allows you to earn the DAI savings rate on your DAI while holding this CHAI contract. And this CHAI contract can be traded freely. However, that comes with its own set of UX issues. The issue is that one CHAI does not always equal one DAI. It's kind of the same UX issue that we ran into for CDAI or iDAI. The exchange rate is constantly changing as you are earning interest. So maybe when you deposit your DAI into the CHAI contract, it's worth, or one CHAI equals one DAI, but a year from now, one CHAI is going to be worth 1.02 DAI, right? So with the CHAI bridge, you can allow people to hold CHAI and earn interest, but when someone goes and fills that order, they will just receive vanilla DAI. And the reason we like starting with this is because the DAI savings rate is already built into multi-collateral DAI. So if you are holding DAI and you trust that system, you are implicitly trusting the DAI savings rate already. There's no additional trust model involved in using an external lending protocol or anything like that. The way this would work, you deposit your DAI into the CHAI contract, create an order after setting an allowance to this CHAI bridge contract, and then the order can be filled as normal, and the taker will just receive DAI. I guess before moving on to this slide, does anyone have any questions so far? Cool.
Just a quick question about timeline. When will that be up and testable, if it's not already?
The CHAI and DYDX bridges?
Correct.
So the contracts will be done by end of week, this week. And then we plan on adding support to both Mesh and ZeroX API, which I would expect would take about another week. You could also, go ahead and add support yourself. I'm not sure if you're planning on using Mesh or ZeroX API in the short term, but yeah, you would essentially we'll create a nice spec for how you would interpret the asset data and stuff like that. But it should be fairly easy to just mix these orders into an existing DAI order book.
Yeah, maybe an additional point is we're adding support for validating orders involving this asset type to the devutils.sol smart contract. So with an ETH call, you can just validate any order that has this asset type. And that part at least should be very straightforward.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still a bit of a manual process to like add support for bridges. Bridges can be permissionlessly deployed, but like if people aren't able to expose these orders to their end users, then no one's going to use them. But yeah, it should be a fairly straightforward process, and we'll create ways for anyone to validate these orders in the devutils contract. Any other questions up until now?
Just like rough difference in gas price if you're going to mix these orders in with existing DAI-based orders. Do you just have like a general idea? Is it twice as much gas or 50% more?
No, it's going to be a lot less than twice as much, and it gets also much cheaper after the Istanbul hard fork in a few days. So off the top of my head, I would guess, I don't know, maybe like 30,000 extra gas or something like that. That's a pretty rough estimate, though. Yeah, I would expect that to be a bit higher for DYDX. We need to do further testing on that. Let's say end-to-end integration tests are somewhat difficult with external code bases, but it's something we're also working on. Cool. So wanted to open up a discussion on protocol fees for non-fungible token marketplaces. Over the past few months, we've gotten a fair amount of questions around this. Like, is it fair to charge smaller trades protocol fees in the same way that you would for a larger trade? And we've finally been able to get some good data because Gods Unchained cards were unlocked for trading. I think it was about a week ago now, or maybe 2 weeks. And since then, they've broken all records for daily trade count on 0x. I think, they've consistently been like 4,000 to 10,000 trades a day for just Gods Unchained cards. And we got a chance to look at some of the data, and we found that median gas prices were significantly lower than for ERC20 tokens. About a factor of 15 lower, which also means that generally people are going to be paying lower protocol fees on those as well. So, we're going to be monitoring this and seeing if the trend continues. But I think this roughly aligns with our expectations, and I don't think that the additional couple cents is going to be a big hurdle for anyone.
Is there even a mechanism in place now that would allow you to not charge or to adjust the protocol fee for NFTs?
No.
Okay.
There is not a mechanism in place for the sake of simplicity. And we kind of thought that this would be the case with non-fungible token trades having lower gas prices, but we haven't been able to get good data on it until recently, so just wanted to share that.
All right, guys. Well, with V3, I guess most of the people here are already aware that one of the big things that we introduced with this version is a stake-based liquidity incentive systems. I believe you've heard kind of the how it works under the hood many times, but again, to reiterate, our objective here is to redistribute the ownership of the ZRX token towards the market participants, market makers. We know that they are a key partner ecosystem player here. So this system is really looking at not only redistributing the ZRX tokens to these category of users, but also making their life easier in a way when providing liquidity to the system by introducing these rewards back that we believe are going to be a good incentive to, for example, get tighter spreads and also protect them from art bots that sometimes like engage in these price auction that basically lead to, in the case of staking rewards, to rebate back to the market makers. Now, this system is live. That means that market makers can create their own staking pools and start earning rewards with the liquidity that they are providing. We have published a comprehensive guide that basically shows all the step-by-step process to create and manage these staking pools. So we're looking at basically having the first few staking pools opened up in the next few weeks. We're already engaging with the most prominent market makers, and they're working on that as we speak. As you're aware, though, this system basically opens up a way for the normal or other token holders to basically stake market makers with their own ZRX tokens. And in that way, token holders can earn rewards and share rewards with the market maker. This infographic shows roughly how the system works. Basically all the protocol fees are collected into the main pool. Then the pool basically calculates the rewards that are owed to the specific staking pool based on their market making activity and the stake. And then within that, the market maker can choose what to share with the token holders that have staked with them, and that distribution will happen based on the share of the tokens that were staked. So obviously there's a participation by market makers, but also ZRX holders. And can we go to the next slide? Obviously the community started asking, okay, this is great. We can interact staking contracts through all the the tooling available, but what happens with the normal average, let's say, ZRX holder that might not be as maybe expert with this tooling? And someone also brought up, okay, are we going to have a web-based UI where ZRX holders can do that? And obviously the answer, as you might have got, is yes. And we're going to work on that. We have been working on that in the last couple of months. Here we wanted to basically show us a quick sneak peek to how the UI looks like. Basically, this is a website where any token holders can basically search for all the open staking pools, select the ones that they want to stake with, get the significant, most relevant metrics that should basically inform their decision, and basically stake with them by connecting to the MetaMask wallet at first. This website will basically come with all the metrics from the aggregated metrics of the whole system to basically the staking pool related metrics. Here you can see the ones that we chose to show users. As you are aware, the system basically works in a cadence of epochs of 10 days. And basically we'll be showing all the collected fees that were collected during that epoch, the rewards that are shared with the delegators, and also the percentage of staked or stake ratio that basically shows what's the opportunity for the delegator to get the maximum of their maximum ROI out of the stake that they're gonna basically produce. This is showing actually one flow that we call Wizard. It's basically a simplified version of, basically we make it simple for the ZRX token holders to choose their staking pools that they want to stake with. We basically recommend a staking pool based on the amount of ZRX tokens that they are willing to basically stake. But they also have the ability to look into more details of a specific staking pool and make their decision themselves. I believe it's in the next slide. there's basically a screenshot of the market maker page where they'll be able to see historically all the fees that were generated by the specific staking pool in the current epoch, all time, and they'll be able to basically get enough information to make that decision. Also, what's interesting, I'll basically link it to what Fulia said earlier. This website is powered by, it's collecting all the data from endpoints in the 0x API, which is open source. So what's also interesting is that basically any other project can leverage this data to create their own experiences, but we started with this developed by us directly to really enable the staking by 0x token holders. We're finishing up with the last touches here. V3 just launched, so we are still waiting for staking pools to be created. It should happen in the next couple of weeks. So we're targeting mid to end of the month for a launch, but we might delay it based on the amount of activity that we see on staking pools. We obviously want to make sure that once this is out, there's enough information for token holders to start interacting with the system.
So I just wanted to give a quick update on what's going on with Mesh. As you guys probably know, we've been in a period of beta testing for the past couple of months. We've finished what we call the hardening milestone. So this includes a variety of features designed to protect against spam attacks and DDoS attacks. We're very comfortable with where Mesh is at right now in terms of resistance to those types of attacks. We've been working on a lot of bug fixes and optimizations for performance. I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that's been testing the beta and reporting issues to us. It's been a huge help and will help make Mesh a lot more stable when we remove the beta tag and ask everybody to start using it in production. As another cool announcement, we've been working with Token Trove and GUDEX to test Mesh with a much higher quantity of orders than we've been dealing with on ERC20 markets. So they're currently, last I heard, testing with 120,000 orders. It's been really useful to see how Mesh can perform, and we're working on making improvements to scalability even further. For the coming weeks, we're working on adding custom topics and order filtering. It's kind of like sharding on the Ethereum network and will help a lot in terms of scalability. So if you're only interested in a specific subset of orders, you only share and receive those with your peers. We're continuing to work on improvements to order propagation speed, as well as improving the efficiency and the speed at which we give you events coming from Mesh related to order fillability status changes. And those are the main things. Please reach out to us on Discord if you have any questions or issues.
Cool. Well, that is all we have to present today, but yeah, happy to answer any questions about anything. It's been a while, so yeah, literally anything is fair game.
All right. Just one quick question. So what is your initial plan for for actually bridging orders over once you get the bridge contracts out, now that 0x API is up? Do you expect that you will kickstart that process by starting to bridge those over as the bridges become available?
Are you talking about the external DEX orders or like the DYDX try orders?
The external DEX orders in particular.
Yes. So we are building support into Asset Swapper so that right before you fill an order, essentially it would do an RPC call and get all of the aggregated orders as well, and it would just generate those orders locally and include them in like a market buy or a market sell. This was by far the easiest approach to get up and running, just because, if you take something like Uniswap, you can't really easily convert that into an order book because it entirely depends on how much you want to fill. So, we might have some recommendations for like how to actually display those in the form of an order book, maybe using like some standardized amounts or something like that. But yeah, I think this approach initially is just going to be much easier. So yes, it'll be built into Asset Swapper, and then 0x API is going to use that under the hood as well. We also have a smart contract that is used for sampling and optimizing quotes from all the supported bridge contracts. So initially, we're going to support Kyber, Uniswap, and Oasis. And this contract will, you basically just pass in an amount and it'll return like the optimized values. That's all. This is totally open source, and anyone could take that and run with it if they want.
I think there's a question in the chat.
Yeah. Around Kyber, probably?
Yeah.
We're asking.
As a Kyber with like, I don't know.
I can read the question. It says, what is the estimated release date for the Kyber, Uniswap, and Oasis bridge contracts?
Yeah, so that functionality will be released in the soft launch. So you can expect that over the last couple of weeks of this month.
But if I understand correctly, the contracts are already written?
Contracts are
Smart
live.
contracts?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're savvy
Those
enough,
are
you can use
already
it today. But it'll be flowing through the 0x API quote endpoint in a couple of weeks.
I have a question. This is David from Token Trove. It's in regard to the NFT protocol fees. Right now we have about. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now we have probably about 20,000 orders. That's guessing, but that users want to buy, but right now it's just too expensive with gas. If it went down to one, a lot of them are waiting for like one ETH gas fees probably to buy them. Is there a way, like if in the future we say, oh yeah, we actually do want to change the protocol fees for NFT, is that going to require a brand new, push for contracts, like V3.1 contracts, or is it? Someone asked that question earlier, but I didn't catch the answer.
Yeah, it would be a pretty big undertaking. The issue is that, if you start differentiating like 721 from ERC20 or something like that, then people can wrap their ERC20 tokens in the 721 token to, try to lower their protocol fees. That seems like it's a bit of an unsolved problem right now. So I wouldn't expect any major changes anytime soon. To 20,000 orders of that scale right now?
Yeah, but they're all worth, a penny, right? So essentially the orders are worth the minimum gas plus a penny, right? That's basically what they're looking at. Once bundling is done, maybe that will probably alleviate like the really low value tokens, I'm hoping. So that's why I was wondering if in the future how hard it would be to implement after that. But yeah, if the stats look fine now for it. So.
Any other questions? All right, awesome. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for attending. And yeah, feel free to hit us up if anything comes up, and yeah, keep us updated with the migration process.